One could say this is a story decades in the making, although it really took place in a few short years. It's a story about friends and music, friendships forged from destructive lifestyles, and the redemption brought on by the love of music. This journey was a long one. I know because I was there, saw it with my own two eyes. I was there when Fred got his first drum set and remember the awkward first shows. The band was on a collision course with fame, but not before finding Lauren and Tony. And at the time, little did anyone know that their pending fame would provide a difficult coexistence with their desire for sanctification and purpose. This is the story of Crystavox. It's been 20 years now, and we're all something like 40. That desire for and pursuit of sanctification that I was talking about started this fire, and God's grace continues to fuel the flames. While this band may have faded into history, our friendships have lasted a lifetime.
I remember there was a point in high school where I started to realize how much music was impacting me. Whatever music choice I made seemed to have a real impression on my attitude, and sometimes for the wrong reasons. But I remember putting in certain music to work out to, certain music to do this to, certain music to prep up for surfing or whatever we were doing, and that impact was huge on me, and I started to realize, I want to create music that has that same motivating power for Christ.
Adam and I had grown up at First Baptist El Cajon, and when we started playing, I don't even remember what it was. It had to be early '80s, and there was another guitar player in the youth group, Jeff Surs, and Jeff was, the guitar player in Logos, which was the very first band we were ever in, and he was guitar player in Evidence, and Jeff was farther along as a musician than we were, only because he'd been playing longer. So he was kind of our leader for a time, and Jeff played a certain way. He loved Southern classic rock, so everything kind of sounded minor and kind of Leonard Skinner-ish, and it was one of those growth things where you go through musicians and friends, and things change and people move on, and
when Lauren joined, I remember there was just something unique about Lauren and Warren when they came on, and after the Windows and Mirrors thing had sort of run its course and we were deciding where we were going to go next, Lauren brought some fantastic writing skills to the band and allowed us to start developing true writing skills, as opposed to just making it, a song that could be 3.5 minutes and could be on a radio. It's a great live song, but does it really work? Does it last? And so I remember him bringing a great degree of writing skills to the band, and that pushed us over the top as we went on into Crystavox.
Each of the band's efforts in the early years was just preparation for the pending collaboration with Lauren. Lauren's time in Private Echo and the writing skills developed while playing with Warren Cook was adding something that had been missing from Adam and Fred's music. Windows and Mirrors seemed to be the next logical step. This era introduced Crystavox's first guitarist, Monty Matthews. Windows and Mirrors released one demo tape and played a single show before dropping the pop genre and embracing the metal and rock position, which ultimately was to become Crystavox.
Other than a band called Private Echo, Warren Cook, myself, and Zach Hewitt, and a few others that came in and out. But that was an amazing time for me because Warren and I, our number one goal was to write songs. And we probably wrote 500 songs, and that's where I really started developing writing skills with Warren. And we had an awesome opportunity to go into a real recording studio, 2-inch, 24-track, the whole deal. And I was 16 years old at the time. And when I walked into that place and we started laying down the music, I fell in love with the studio.
Crystavox had made its first leap onto bigger and louder stages. Lauren's engineering skills had provided the band with a much-needed demo tape. As the shows got bigger, the band struggled, not only to perform, but to get churches on board with permitting the size of the band's production and presentation.
We were almost uncomfortable with our own presentation, is how it always seemed to me. And it may have been that we were always trying to be Motley Crue in a sanctuary, and it may have been a little bit over the top for anybody, that and 110 dB all the time.
I think we were just trying to find ourselves in the Christian market in a church. It was just, we were just so out there and so loud, but yet trying to be a conservative Christian was almost an oxymoron. It was weird.
It was like going from screaming and then preaching.
Yeah, it was just.
By the way,
yeah, it was hard to figure out.
And we all were having come from slightly different backgrounds and slightly different ideas about performance, and not even being developed in our own ideas of performance prior to being. And it happened very, very quickly. And because of that, I think you're right. We were kind of it worked because it was a rock band. I think the underlying thing was that we all had a good time, and that sold the shows too as a performance aspect because we just had a blast.
So, on the Tough Boys video, again, we're lucky here because one of our longtime friends, Mike Badamy, who was graduating from San Diego State's film school about that time, decided his graduating final project is going to be a music video, and he had done one prior, the In Your Arms video, which was a little bit of a catastrophe, but it was a video. And that was actually a song off the Windows and Mirrors record, In Your Arms. So, but here we are with no money, and MTV's brand new. Nobody at that point in time could ever afford to do a video, and we're not signed yet. And next thing you know, we're at San Diego State's open air theater, on the stage with a completely closed amphitheater doing a full film shoot for a music video, which was, of course, for the song Tough Boys. And I believe when that was finished, that's all that Regency needed to see to say, here's your record contract.
That is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, so we always had the big PA and the big lights. Now is the time for the big stadium and the big film crew. It was our next step. It was cool.
There was still nobody in the crowd.
No,
but
no.
we were used to that.
Didn't need that.
In my mind, it was a packed house. That's all I got to say.
Lights were out. We couldn't tell who
Every
was there.
seat was full that day, man.
Hard being a rock star. Here's you up.
Thanks, Warren. Exactly what I was expecting you to say.
Okay.
Despite newfound success, a weakness had developed at guitar, and Adam wanted to make a change. Asking Monty Matthews to leave meant trying to find a new guitarist. Longtime friend and musician, Leo Correa, would fill in as A&R reps became interested. The band didn't know it, but it was about to get signed with no guitarist.
You remember when we first came over to your house there in Claremont and like, dude, play a guitar for our band, please? Do you even remember that? All you played was Sacrifice. We're like, yes, that's it. You're in.
You came over to my house? I thought I came over to
I remember
the
that.
Peach.
Well, I think that was later, yeah. Was that the Sour Milk episode?
Yes.
Yes.
That was
Sitting on the table?
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, he plays guitar great. We got Sour Milk sitting right there on the table.
Tony had like a bachelor pad. It was kind of a bachelor pad.
Was it curdled or something? Oh, Tony,
I don't remember that.
is there a sink in the house?
What I do remember is you guys called me several times, and actually, every time I said no.
Right.
I don't know how long that I want, maybe a couple weeks or a
Yeah.
couple months. My memory is not so good.
Right.
But, and I just didn't feel like it was time for me to really do anything. I was heavily involved with my church, and that kind of seemed to take all my time. And just didn't feel like God was saying, go ahead. So they'd call, and I just, not really, not now. And I think the last time that you'd called, I don't know what had changed in my life.
Yes, there were threats. Go
There
ahead,
were
you can
threats.
say it.
Maybe there was the threats. It was the bodily harm. And I just remember, praying about it, and something had changed. It wasn't like, do this. It was just like, okay, let's explore this to the next step. I was really more interested in finding guys who wanted to minister through music, and meeting these guys for the first time, it was obvious that's where they were headed.
All hail to the Lord and King. Lift up your voice and sing. Don't forget
Adam, Lauren, and Fred had finally convinced Tony to join the band, and for Regency Records to take a chance on them.
rocks to cry for lack of humble praise. Hail him in the marketplace.
Crystavox had signed its first record deal, based largely on a video and a few songs.
Lord and King. Lift up your voice and sing.
While the record company was announcing its new band to the industry, the writing started with Tony, much of it in the studio. The band insisted on producing and engineering the release, but help would be needed. Industry-leading producers John and Dino Elefante and Disney engineer Terry Cox offered some advice that would bolster the sound of the first record.
I was working at Mixed Masters Recording Studios, professional studio, and during that time I remember Def Leppard having these huge background vocals, and that really enticed us, especially Adam, since he loves harmonies and a lot of vocals. And at the time, I had an engineer, Terry Cox, who was an engineer for Disney. He was one of my mentors, and I asked a lot about how is it they came up with different sounds. And he talked a lot about how they did all these separate tracks. And then we met up with John and Dina Elefante when we got signed, and they talked about it as well. How is it that you stack up vocals? And so what we did is we took 24 tracks, and we mixed it down to 2, the left and right stereo, and put it onto another tape. So now we had 22 tracks available, and we would fill up all 22 tracks of just vocals.
It's your Fred in action with Crystavox and all around the world. A WGCA's Cornerstone Spotlight Special.
The sounds of the self-titled release were massive. Singles were exploding onto radio nationwide, but without Christian radio in the band's hometown, they were oblivious to the buzz that had developed.
From Crystavox, and we're listening to WNMC Metal Mainline at 90.9 FM.
Adam live from Crystavox. Going whenever we're in Florida.
Press requests had started from all corners of the nation and from places that the band had never been. Despite the radio singles and chart-topping airplay, the guys just kept being musicians. until the release of Home Again, the ballad they had written largely in the studio.
The big song off of the Crystavox debut is Home Again. That's the song we've been playing so much. How did that song come about?
That was of all the songs.
But I remember you sitting against the door jamb in the practice studio playing the intro part, and it's really kind of only place we went with it. I don't even know if we ever really played that song from start to finish in the practice studio before we got to the studio.
Well, I think prior to that, I had been working on the guitar part just recently. I just started writing. It was, there was no end goal for it. It was just something I was writing. And when somebody said we needed a ballad, and it's like, okay, well, how about this? And then as soon as you heard that, I remember you running out the door and saying, I've got something. And you went to your file cabinet, came back with a set of lyrics. And it seems to me that, it wasn't complete, but I think the first time I just started playing it, you ended up singing it, and it was like, that was like half of the song right there.
Yeah.
Home Again, the band's first attempt at a power ballad, was dominating radio on every chart, including the mainstream CCM pop charts. Radio had Home Again in heavy rotation, even on contemporary stations. The Prodigal Son story was killing the airwaves. Hidden by the success of Home Again was the rise of a new song that would top the charts and make the debut release the top-selling metal record in Christian music.
88.5 WGCA. Welcome to another Cornerstone Spotlight.
Crystavox soon met its fan base in Chicago at Cornerstone 91, about the same time Sacrifice started to climb the metal charts.
Weekend in Bushnell, Illinois, and tonight we'll feature Crystavox.
So anyway, the songs are done, the first record's out, it goes on to radio, which seems normal, and I guess it is, but for us it was just such a weird thing because we didn't even have Christian radio in San Diego, so we were completely blind to what was happening in the country in our city. So we would just hear, reports from other people. The radio stations at that time would send in cards to the record company saying heavy rotation, doing great, send more, things like that. But I was a manager at Guitar Center. My buddy Mike Feehan, who ended up going on to play for White Cross, we were actually both worked there. He comes up the stairs one day, and Sacrifice had been climbing up the charts, and Stryper was number one. I think Bride was number two. Two of our, two of the real big bands. And Mike said, dude, you guys are number one. And I'm like, cool, dude, thanks a lot. No idea what you mean, but he's like, no, Sacrifice is number one on the charts.
Well, I finally had hard proof that somebody other than my mom was listening to it. Pretty much.
My mom wasn't listening to it.
Yeah.
It was too hard music for her.
Yeah.
Let's get into some questions here. I know you're almost ready to release a new album, but first I'd like to ask a few questions about your last album, which is one of my favorites, and it's available on Regency Records if anybody's looking for a great album to pick up right now. This song, It's All Right to Rock and Roll, was a big hit. And do you feel that even though Christian rock has been around for over 20 years, the majority of people still don't accept it as a valid ministry?
Well, I think it's come a long ways. I grew up in the church, and I had a real problem with the authorities telling me I couldn't do the kind of music I was doing. It was like pulling teeth for us to get to play for churches, and I'm sitting there going, well, what's the point? We're here with a ministry, and they don't want to hear it,
It's all right to rock and roll, yeah.
I think that the key thing in anything that I've done and any of the successes I've had were when I had my eyes on God. And that's pure and simple.
Feeling hot like a bluebird that's coming on strong. Taking off because it won't be.
If you're going to be conscious and be realistic and honest about it, the things that we do as diversions or entertainment, they really don't satisfy. They can take off your mind, off the reality of your pain or your hurt, whatever it is, for a little while. But when it comes down to it, when you're alone in your room and you're thinking about your life, it doesn't cut it.
God can use anybody at any time, at any place. It's not how well you're doing with God, what your relationship is with God. He takes your personality just the way it is. He'll take you, your spiritual level, where you're at, and he can use you in any time, in any place.
With 4 top 10 singles from the first CD and being #1 in sales with the hottest selling metal record in the country, the band was finally a full-blown ministry, and a loud one at that. As touring started, so did writing for the expected sophomore release. The next record would see a bigger record company, major distribution, and the introduction to a brand new multi-million-dollar recording studio in Burbank, California.
To change will, the will to change will always keep him. Okay.
The pop metal sounds that dominated radio were changing with the times. Crystavox had gone dark and heavy, surrounding Adam Lee Kemp's advanced lyrical abilities.
Let me put Because on there too. Solo it, make sure it's clean, but I think I should be able to do it.
The bottom line was a massive effort, and it was about to be released on the heels of a very successful first album.
To change will always keep him coming back for more.
Whew. I do not know if I'm hitting it or not. It's just really lots of loudness. It was a natural transition for us to go from what was the end of the 80s and early 90s was the glam, big hair days and all of that, metal type thing or rock, to more of a grunge thing. And I mean, heck, going to our grunge shows and the bottom line shows when we showed up was like me, whatever, wore around the house. I loved it. I didn't have to change. I didn't have to set up for it. I just wore my, so that I think that was part of the transition.
I mean, that was in the early 90s when we were, launching into Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and everything was fundamentally changing in music globally. Crystavox didn't sound like anybody on the bottom line. Nobody that was currently on the radio.
And I think the first record we were still going for the radio, the 3.5 minutes, the whatever, and I mean, we knew how to do a cookie cutter commercial song by that point, and that's what we were sort of aiming for, thinking that's what we were supposed to do.
Congratulations, Southern California. You have returned and crash-landed on the ground floor. Good evening. This is Kevin Allison, 10:06 on your rock and roll evening. We're opening up 2 special lines just for tonight, okay? So throw it away till next Saturday night, and we are going to need it. In about 8 minutes, you'll be meeting Crystavox live for the release of their new album, The Bottom Line.
The world's still lying and we're not buying. Circumstantial demise. Staying in God's name, defending his clocky while deception is on the rise. Come on. The tables are turning, the fire is burning. Oh, still like is. Accusations are flocking because they're trying to justify their targets. The truth is standing while they are branding the only mark they know. They are defending while we are sending reinforcements as we go. On and on, standing under fire. False accusations only live to sire. Holding our ground on a high tide while you ever leave.
Crystavox, first album put out a little over a year ago, had some big hits on it. You've heard the music here on the ground floor. They're on Ocean Records now and getting ready to put out a brand new album. Guys, what's it entitled?
The Bottom Line.
And it's The Bottom Line. And it's actually a different sound, and I think a very healthy, positive growth in you guys' career. It sounds like you guys had to spend a lot of time in pre-production, post-production, mid-production. How happy are you with the new release?
Very happy. Very happy. Yeah, what you said about pre-post and everything else, I mean, my gosh. We've been through it.
The collaboration of Crystavox in the studio had worked for a second time. The Bottom Line was out, and again, the songs were climbing the charts. As the fans evaluated the songs, a major video shoot was on the horizon.
Each one of us in our own right sort of has the production mindset. We're always looking, it's not just our part, it's not just our piece. Every one of us has had a part in what we write and as ideas and the way we go and how we do live. We're all big thinkers in that respect. And so because of that, we're never sticking to a band. Or, I never really had a favorite. And to this day, I can't name a favorite. I've got favorites. And they change, as a new band comes out, kind of a new production idea, I go that direction and like it and try it out a little bit.
After shooting Tough Boys with Mike Batamy, and then before that In Your Arms, and Kelly Seagraves had offered to shoot a full-blown live concert video with a number of MTV-type, studio-type videos, and around the show on New Year's Eve, it was neat having a stage, where the band, the whole set was there, and we were rehearsing and shooting all the segments for this video that ended up never being released until now.
Crystavox was playing in front of crowds that knew the songs well enough to sing along. As much as the band was playing, and in spite of their radio success, each of them continued to work full-time jobs and burn every available vacation day in order to support the Crystavox revolution. The hectic schedule was going to get even worse with Adam, Fred, and Lauren all getting married while the Bottom Line was charting. Nevertheless, they were still able to find the stage, family in tow. The Bottom Line tour also featured legendary metal bassist Mike Grotto, whose time in Deliverance and Recon enhanced the Crystavox live show. As the Bottom Line tour wore on, Fred's time behind the kit was coming to a close. A new family and a need for a career simply outweighed his desire for touring.
Remember what you
Despite the heaviness of the content on the bottom line, another ballad had made the cut. A very different kind of song, and nothing like Home Again. Once again, the song would be written in the studio.
In the back of our minds, you knew that when you put an album together, you have to have, you know, this type of song, that type of song, and you got to have a ballad. That was the assumption. And we tried to. I remember when we were writing, sometimes we think, well, we don't really have a song like this yet. And so we would think that direction. We always had to try to have a song that was more, you know, thought-provoking, mainstream, Shame, Power Games, a ballad, Home Again, No Boundaries, you know, Paradise and Sacrifice for metal, and it just sort of played out that way. So you didn't get bored with the album. You know, we wanted people to listen to it and for it to grow on you all the time and never be boring. So out of that, you know, we No Boundaries came for the second album, and it's unique and different from Home Again in a lot of ways, but I thought had a unique power to it as well, and its sort of its presence.
Have mercy on me, Father, for I have done you wrong. I've broken your heart again, and I cannot carry on. My legs are weak from running, and I can't cry anymore. I've given up pretending I need you like never before. Then in your arms I feel it, and in your face I see. In your words I read it, just how much you love me. Love is love that knows no boundaries. Then
While much work was done at Ocean, it wasn't without the big studio drama.
We got there right after, I guess, the first people to get in there were Night Ranger, I guess, Jeff Watson and Brad Gillis.
just
to kind
It
of...
wasn't also some of the Whitesnake? No.
Well, Jimmy,
No, it wasn't.
Jimmy Page showed up later, and we kind of had to move because of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we
Hey,
got
what are you gonna do? All right. Well, if I'm gonna get bumped, nobody better to get bumped by.
Yeah.
Didn't Cetera
Well,
bump us out?
Peter Cetera came in to do some vocal work. We came in to do some work one day, and I walked in, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's Peter Cetera stuff," and he had his carpet in the ISO room and his chair,
His own
and
phone.
his own
That
phone.
was brought in just for him.
Yeah, a phone
Before
in the
cell
ISO
phones.
room, and a really cool tube mic hanging there. So I took a picture of it.
Many fight to save the land where nothing ever grows. Deception leads them to the well where water never flows. Rivers start to hunt for gold where empty mines are found. If the cost of life is not enough to investigate the sound, the promised land is never where you think that it should.
So yeah, it was an amazing studio. I mean, for big acts to literally want to come in. I remember Peter Cetera's recording engineer. I talked with him. Peter Cetera has his own engineer full-time year-round, and whenever he is not recording, the engineer, he travels the whole entire world trying to find the next recording studio to be at. And at that time, he had found Ocean Studios to be the place. So that's when he came in and says, "Hey, we want to record here, but we need to do it now." So little Crystavox had to step aside at that time.
Of course, we didn't step down too far because we went down to Mama Joe's down the street, which is where the Police and a multitude of other
Billy Joel,
huge artists.
Amy Grant.
Yeah.
Open hands and willing eyes can see. Paradise, because he gives to all who will receive. Paradise is find a peace of mind with a humble heart in the air. Sacrifice, worth the price, and keep on to retrieve. Paradise,
As music changed forever in the early 90s, so did Crystavox. The songs on the bottom line found their way into the top 10 again, but the band had reached an unexpected predicament. With the loss of Fred, they would have to find a new member to carry on. At this point, no one knew the future, but they knew it would involve music and ministry. As fate would have it, they all ended up just fine.
Well, here we are 25, 26 years later, if you go back to when we first started playing. And you know, what was really odd that I always thought is that when we played, there was no internet, there was no email, you know, cell phones were not a consumer product. the social networking, all that stuff didn't even exist. I mean, the internet was not even out yet. So, you know, here we are 20 years later, and you can Google your band and see pages and pages and pages of Crystavox, you know, and it's like, well, you know, people overseas are still selling black marketed, you know, albums because they're not in print. Nobody has them, including us. So it was neat, you know, coming up on an anniversary like 20 years and everybody still being in music and in production. And local, to meet again, and we'd talked over the years, but to meet again with some kind of, you know, this is it, we're done kind of thing, but have a product that we could, you know, we could recreate and you know, I don't know, kind of release it in a different manner.
I remember when I took the opportunity when Crystavox was going to answer fan mail. We didn't get. We're so grateful for everyone we got, but we weren't big enough, and we got so much I couldn't handle. So I hand wrote responses to all of them, and to me that was the extension of the people ministry. And plus, I'm kind of thinking, God, what are you doing? You know, I show up and play every day. What is this making? And people's lives are being touched. And now with the advent of, you know, social networking sites and all this, I'm meeting old fans, and now we're friends, and we're just normal people. So we're having a blast with it. But as this thing is progressing with YouTube, and I see the comments that people are leaving, and whenever I get a chance, I respond to it because it's people meeting people's needs and praying for people, and I think that's really what we're hoping. You know, seeing that is what kind of fed this. You know, it was more than, and we could just do this for the fun of it. But ultimately, if you know, there are people out there that still certain pieces of this impacted them. You know, just like other bands impacted me, and I'll never forget it. You know, certain songs that are still in my head, and I need those.
So there you go. We are so grateful to have shared our music with you over the years. Thankfully, each of us has continued on in music and production in one form or another. Between us, we have 10 kids who all play, write, and sing. Many of them are already better than we ever were. And yes, we are all happily married to wives that are looking at us cross-eyed with this latest project. It has crossed our minds that the end of this book has a couple of blank pages left. We're not sure what to do with them quite yet. Perhaps a new melody or two, or maybe we will just drool on them, realizing it's not as easy as we think. And in music, 40 is not the new 20.